I think by now everybody who doesn't live in a cave knows about the new Sonic movie franchise. It has been one of the most successful movie series in recent times. Most Sonic fans tend to agree that it is a great film. All of the people I met online had only good things to say about these movies, and initially, when it was announced, I was very excited to see it too at my local theaters. However, as time passed I started to feel a very bitter taste in my mouth regarding these new films, that only became more intense as time went on. My initial excitement turned into fear, which turned into a very dark realization, about the situation of the modern movie industry, about unopposed cultural appropriation, about the horrifying effects of globalization. But let's take a step at a time, let's not rush. In fact, let's talk first about the movie itself, and then we will address the dark truth behind these types of movies. So for anybody who does not know, Sonic the Hedgehog the movie is a currently ongoing series of films which are based off the Sonic the Hedgehog game franchise. More precisely, it is based on the first games of the series, which came out originally as exclusives to the Sega Genesis consoles. Those games were hugely popular at the time, so popular that Sega decided to establish Sonic the Hedgehog as their brand mascot. The movies are produced by Paramount Pictures. The first movie came out back in early 2020, while the second movie came out some months ago in mid-2022. But I think you all know about that by now, so I'll stop our history lesson there. The movie presents itself as a pretty generic family-friendly kids-oriented live-action movie, which would be fine if the producers didn't decide to label it as a movie for the whole family. Apparently it is somewhat of a trend in the modern film industry to label movies that are made specifically for little kids as movies made for the whole family. That alone tricks you into believing that these movies would be enjoyable by a normal adult and teenage audience, while they are actually movies with the cringiest and most pathetic jokes and gags, which only small kids would find funny. For example, there is this scene in the first movie where Sonic farts from eating chili dogs. This shows exactly what my first issue with the movie is: the overwhelming abundance of childish, often cringy slapstick humor, toilet jokes and all of that corporate kid-oriented humor. This takes me to the second reason for why I despise those movies so much. They feel soulless. It does not feel like there was time and dedication put into these movies. It feels very corporate. That's the word, corporate. The utterly lack of any love and or passion for the product that's being marketed to the general public. Sonic does not have any of that 90s coolness. He is not confident in itself, nor is he likable as a character. They tried to make him appeal to younger kids, by making him be relatable to this specific audience. This is why we get the toilet humor, the silly jokes. They are trying to make him more relatable as possible to young children, and for the older fans they try to add some random, disconnected nostalgic references to the main games, so that the man-children that compose 80% of Sonic's fandom can say, "Oh my god, they referenced the game I grew up with, take my money." They are exploiting the nostalgia of the older fans to try and get them to watch a kids' movie they otherwise would not even consider watching. This is called capitalism, and it is one of the worst cancers of modern society. What I am trying to say is that the Sonic of the movie is not the same Sonic I know and love. It is a corporate icon created by money-hungry men, whose only goal is to gain as much wealth they can with the minimum effort possible. 30 years ago stuff like this had love and passion put into it, but as the world advanced in technology and corporations got bigger, the people who run these companies realized that with having such power over the general public they could make a huge profit even with a very small amount of effort and care for the final product. This is why we don't see 2D animation anymore these days. 2D animation is considered too expensive compared to the cheaper and more generic 3D animation. This is why everything in modern times feel the same. Heck, how many times have you seen a movie about a cartoon character that comes to the real world and struggles to fit in society? This takes me back to the movie being made the most relatable as possible for young kids and children. When I say that this stuff took effort back in the day, I really mean it. Let's take for example the much better, much more interesting 1996 Sonic the Hedgehog OVA, also known as the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie. As somebody who has watched it multiple times, I can safely say that the OVA does right everything the movie fails to do. It has a story that is truly enjoyable by all audiences and by people of all ages. Compared to the 2020 movie series, not only the personality of the various characters reflect their intended, in-game version, but it also makes them much more deeply developed from a personality point of view. The best example would be Metal Sonic, probably one of the highlights of the OVA. In Sonic CD he was just a threatening counterpart to the main protagonist, with some backstory given in the manual of the game. But in the OVA Metal Sonic has actually some interesting character traits, like the fact that he is linked with all of Sonic's memories, and because of this both Sonic and Metal Sonic know exactly what each other are thinking, in an attempt by Eggman to build a better version of Sonic, with the ultimate goal of defeating him in battle. This is for me one of the best examples of corporatization of the media by big companies. They took what was once one of the most famous gaming icons worldwide and stripped him of what made him likable in the first place. This would also be a good moment to bring up my third and most important reason for why I despise these movies so much. They are the fruit of America's globalization ambitions. Sonic is a Japanese icon made by Japanese people, even though it originally was designed to appeal to a general Western audience. Classic-era Sonic always had a Japanese soul. You can see it from the character design, from the art that was created for the games. More precisely, Sonic's art has always been inspired by Japanese city pop art and especially for the urban levels, by landscapes found throughout all of Japan. Starlight Zone is an excellent example of what I mean with this. It was clearly inspired by the midnight cityscapes of Tokyo. The music of the first two games was composed by a member of a city pop band. Sonic's essence was so Japanese in fact that they had to completely change his design and personality for the American and Western markets when releasing the original games outside of Japan. The Sonic OVA is an anime-style movie made by a medium-sized Japanese animation studio. But then how is it possible that what we have today is a movie made by some of the most powerful and influential people in the United States, with all of Sonic's Japanese cultural traits being forcefully removed to make this movie series appeal to the worldwide audience, the largest possible? This is called globalization, the centralization of cultural influence and power into a singular nation, which aims to strip each country of their culture and traditions, replacing them with an Americanized corporate culture. Japan is one of the most vulnerable nations when it comes to globalization and its disastrous effects. This nation is the only one to have fully survived the effects of colonization by Western powers. What we see now is America trying to erase Japanese culture and traditions as a way to expand its constantly growing hegemony. This could also be called neo-colonization, which differs from 19th century colonization from the fact that instead of being a struggle for power over a specific region, it is a struggle for regional influence through diplomacy and hegemony, often in very shady ways, which includes corruption of government officials and cultural appropriation. Which the Sonic movie series is part of alongside the Super Mario movie, which is currently being created by another American animation Hollywood giant. It is the sad reality we live in, and people seem to be blinded by a veil of blissful ignorance that makes them slaves of capitalism and big corporations. You could actively make the world a hell to live in. If you are powerful enough, not only you will not face any consequence, you will also still get support from the ignorant public, who could not care less about the shady corporate decisions made by their leaders. It is a never-ending cycle, a depressing look at how our modern society is structured. I hope that with this video not only I managed to give you a better idea of the disastrous effects of these movies, but I also managed to convince you to avoid supporting these types of movies. Honestly, I think that the whole American movie industry has went downhill since the early 2000s, especially Disney, which once was one of my dearest and most favorite animation studios, now being one of my most despised companies. Not only Disney but many other companies too with monopolistic ambitions. My suggestion would be to watch and support local or small/medium-sized independent movie studios, who put a lot of effort and love into their creations compared to the classic movie giants you are used to hear people talk about. It might not be much, but you will prove yourself not to be a slave of modern capitalism and corporations. Thanks for watching.